All right, let's get right into it. Today we're digging into an analysis that's asking a pretty big question. Is Hollywood completely out of new ideas? The argument we're going to break down is that the whole system is kind of at a breaking point, and we're going to look at exactly why.
You know that feeling, right? You get comfy, press play on a brand new movie, and like 10 minutes in, you've already called the ending. It feels a little predictable. Well, according to the analysis we're looking at, you're not imagining things. That feeling, it's apparently a symptom of something much, much bigger happening in entertainment.
So what's behind it all? The source we're examining argues that a lot of what we're watching has become, well, super formulaic. It's like they're just following a recipe, using the same ingredients over and over, which often includes some pretty specific social or political messages.
And this quote from the analysis really just lays it all out there, doesn't it? The argument being made is that characters are getting flattened into these simple, predictable roles. It's less about telling a deep, complex story and more about pushing a certain kind of message.
So let's break down some of these patterns. The source calls them narrative shortcuts. You know, things like the magical guide who pops up with all the answers, or subplots that feel kind of jammed in there. The analysis claims that when you see these tropes over and over, it just drains all the suspense out of the story. It starts to feel less like a unique creation and more like, well, something that came off a factory production line.
Okay, but why? Why would this huge creative industry lean so hard on formulas instead of taking risks on something new? Well, the analysis we're digging into points to one simple, powerful emotion that's driving all the big decisions: plain old fear.
Yeah, fear. The core argument here is that studio execs are just terrified of a flop. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's a high-stakes game. Pushing for a totally original, never-before-seen idea, that's a huge gamble. And if that gamble fails, someone's job is probably on the line.
And this chart really spells out the problem for them. Look, if you're an X and you greenlight some brand new original movie and it bombs, that's on you. It's your fault. But if you reboot a famous franchise, you know, a known IP, and that fails, suddenly there are a million excuses. Oh, the audience for that IP is just gone, or the timing wasn't right. It's not your fault, it's the IP's fault. So you can see why it's so much safer to just stick with what people already know.
The analysis points to the new X-Files reboot as a perfect example of this. Imagine trying to pitch an original show about two agents investigating weird conspiracies. It's a tough sell, but if you call it X-Files, boom, suddenly it's a much safer bet for the studio. The source argues this is how potentially great original ideas get folded into old brands just to get made.
And this isn't just a theory, you know. This fear of risk is having a real, measurable impact on how new shows get made. And when you look at the actual data, wow, it's pretty shocking.
Let's rewind to just 2019. Back then, the big US broadcast networks ordered 66 pilots. Now, a pilot is basically a test episode for a totally new show idea. And get this, 66 was already seen as a pretty low number. But what's happened since then, it's just wild.
Because by 2024, that number had completely cratered. I mean, we're talking rock bottom. Across all the major networks, they ordered a grand total of just 5. 5 pilots. That means only 5 new original ideas even got a shot at making it to your screen. That is a massive drop. Okay, so there is a little bit of good news, I guess. The source mentions that for 2026, the number has bounced back to 12. So yeah, it's better than 5, but when you put it next to the 66 from just a few years back, the picture is crystal clear. The whole system for creating and testing out new shows, it's been completely transformed. So to see how all these ideas, the formulas, the messaging, the risk aversion, actually play out, the analysis zooms in on one specific franchise as a case study: modern Star Trek.
Okay, so the analysis highlights this one line from a promo for the new Starfleet Academy show, and it hones in on that word, comrades. The source we're looking at calls this, and I'm quoting directly here, commie gobbledygook, and argues it's an example of a specific political language being pushed into the show.
And then there's this line. The analysis points to the phrase chosen family as a key trope. The argument in the source is that this idea pops up a lot and that it represents a particular worldview that it claims puts less emphasis on traditional families.
So what's the big takeaway here? According to the source, it's that the writers, who are mostly based in places like LA and New York, are writing for a very specific niche audience. They're writing for people inside their own bubble. And in doing so, the argument goes, they might be completely missing what the rest of the country actually wants to watch.
So if the big Hollywood machine is playing it safe, and the pipeline for new ideas is getting smaller and smaller, it begs a really important question, right? Where are the next great stories going to come from? And where are creative people supposed to find work?
Well, the data presented in the analysis seems to have a pretty clear answer. While jobs in traditional film and TV have been on the decline, there's one area that's actually growing, and that's new media.
And when we say new media, what we're talking about are platforms like YouTube, podcasts, the places where individual creators can just create. You don't need to get permission from a studio head, the barrier to entry is way lower, and you can build a direct relationship with your audience.
And that really leaves us with a final, fascinating question. If the old guard in Hollywood is sticking to safe bets and sequels, does that mean the future of truly new, groundbreaking storytelling isn't in a movie studio at all? Maybe it's with independent creators, right here, building their own worlds and finding their own audiences online.